man walks into a hotel every day. He orders food, eats calmly, and then, without hesitation, steals something before leaving. A spoon today, a napkin tomorrow, a small piece of cutlery the next day. It's almost laughable. A grown man, stealing tiny objects as if no one notices. But someone does. The hotel owner watches everything. He sees the man pocket the spoon. He sees him discreetly slide a fork into his pocket. Yet, every single time, he does nothing. Why? Why would a businessman who works hard to maintain his hotel simply allow someone to steal from him every single day? Is he too kind? Too weak? Or is there a reason behind his silence? What if I told you that his plan was far more brilliant than you think? Stay with me, because this isn't just about theft. It's about human psychology, patience, and a life-changing lesson that no punishment could ever teach. And when the thief finally gets caught, what happens next will shock you. Let's talk about the thief. His name is Arif, a man in his mid-40s. Nothing about him stands out. He's not particularly rich, nor does he look poor. He walks into the hotel like a regular customer, greets the waiter, and takes his usual seat by the window. He orders food, enjoys his meal, and when the time comes to leave, he carefully picks something small. A spoon, a napkin, sometimes a salt shaker, and slips it into his pocket. Not once, not twice, but every single day. Now, the hotel owner, let's call him Raymond, is no fool. He notices everything. From the very first day, he saw the missing spoons, the disappearing napkins, the vanishing sugar packets. First, his staff was confused. "Sir, we keep losing cutlery. Should we check the customers?" Raymond simply smiled. "No need. Just keep an eye on it." And so, day after day, Raymond watched, silently, because he wasn't just looking at what Arif was taking. He was waiting for something much bigger. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Arif's habit continued. First, it was casual, a quick slip of a spoon into his pocket. But as time passed, he grew bolder. He no longer cared about being subtle, because no one stopped him. No one said a word. And this is where the real psychological game began. Arif started to test the limits. Could he take a whole glass? What about a small plate? Would anyone ever say anything? The silence of the hotel staff only encouraged him. He started to believe he was invincible, that maybe, just maybe, they were too afraid to confront him. And so he kept pushing. But what he didn't realize was that Raymond was watching every single move, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One evening, like always, Arif entered the hotel. Nothing seemed different. He ordered his usual meal, ate without a care in the world, and just as he was about to leave, he reached out and grabbed a small silver spoon. He slid it into his pocket, stood up, and turned towards the exit. But just as he took a step forward, "Brother, if you need spoons, just tell me. No need to take them secretly." The words stopped him dead in his tracks. The voice was calm, friendly, but it sent a chill down his spine. Arif turned slowly. His face was pale, his hands stuffed, his mind racing. For the first time, he realized the truth. He had been watched every single day. The hotel owner stood in front of him, smiling, not with anger, not with judgment, just watching. And that's when everything changed. Arif's body stiffened. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. His hands instinctively clenched into fists, but he kept them at his sides, trying to act natural. He forced a weak smile. "Sorry? I don't understand." The hotel owner, Raymond, leaned in slightly, still calm, still composed. "I said, if you need spoons, just tell me. No need to take them secretly." For a brief second, silence filled the air. The waiters stopped moving. Customers turned their heads. Arif felt a wave of shame wash over him. He had been caught. But here's the thing, he wasn't being shouted at. No security was dragging him out. No police were being called. Instead, Raymond was offering him a choice. Admit the truth or keep pretending. Arif swallowed hard. He knew what he had to do. He had to lie. "I don't know what you're talking about." His voice was firm, but inside he was crumbling. Raymond smiled. "It's okay. I'm not angry. I just want to understand. Why? Now Arif was confused. Why wasn't this man yelling? Why wasn't he making a scene? Arif had stolen from him for months. And yet, he stood there, asking him questions like an old friend. Something about it felt worse than being punished. For the first time, guilt settled in. But Arif wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. He took a deep breath. I think you're mistaken. Raymond nodded slowly. Maybe I am. He pulled out a small notepad from his pocket and flipped through the pages. But, just out of curiosity, do you remember what you ate on March 5th? Arif blinked. What? Or maybe March 8th. Or let's say, last Monday. The air around them grew heavy. Arif stared at him, confused and slightly nervous. Why was this man asking about random dates? Raymond let out a small chuckle. You see, I like to keep records. And according to my notes, every time you came here, something small went missing. Arif's stomach dropped. He had been tracked. Every single day. Raymond tapped his notebook. Spoons, forks, napkins, sugar packets. It's all here. Interesting pattern, don't you think? Arif opened his mouth, but no words came out. There was no way out. Raymond sighed and put the notebook away. Look, I'm not here to embarrass you. I just want to understand. Why do you do it? Arif's fingers twitched. He had no excuse left. No clever lie. Only the truth. He lowered his gaze. And then, after a long pause, he finally spoke. Because I can. His voice was almost a whisper. Raymond raised an eyebrow. Because you can? Arif nodded, shame creeping into his expression. Nobody ever stopped me. Nobody ever cared. I just kept going. Raymond studied him for a moment before asking, and now that you know I was watching this whole time, how do you feel? Arif swallowed hard. Embarrassed. For the first time, he looked like a man who regretted his actions. And that's when Raymond did something completely unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver spoon. Here, he extended it toward Arif. Take it. Arif stared at it. What? Take it. You don't have to steal anymore. If you need something, just ask. The entire hotel was watching. The waiters, the customers, everyone. And yet, at that moment, Arif couldn't move. He couldn't take the spoon. Because for the first time, he felt the weight of his actions. This man, the one he had stolen from so many times, was standing there, offering him kindness. It was worse than being caught. Worse than any punishment. It was a lesson, and it changed everything. Arif took a shaky breath and whispered, I'm sorry. Raymond smiled. It's okay. Just don't do it again. That day, Arif walked out of the hotel empty-handed. But for the first time in months, he didn't steal anything, because he no longer wanted to. Arif walked home that evening, his mind racing. For months, he had taken whatever he wanted without thinking twice. A spoon here, a napkin there. Small things that no one would miss, or so he thought. But now he knew the truth. Someone had noticed. Someone had been watching. And yet, instead of punishing him, that person had done something far more powerful. He had offered him a choice. And Arif had felt something that no punishment could ever make him feel. Regret. For the first time in his life, he saw his actions for what they truly were. Not clever. Not harmless. But selfish. As he reached his apartment, he stopped and looked around. The old, cracked walls, the flickering streetlight, the sound of distant traffic. He had lived in this place for years. A place where everyone took what they could. Where people survived by outsmarting the system. Where stealing wasn't seen as a crime, but as a skill. And yet, today he had been shown something different. Not force, not threats, but kindness. And it had shaken him to his core. The test of change. The next morning, Arif woke up feeling strange. He had never started his day like this before. Usually, he would plan his next little theft. A free bus ride. A borrowed cigarette he'd never return. Maybe even another trip to the hotel. But today, he felt different. For the first time, he didn't want to steal. He didn't need to. But here's the thing about change. It's easy to think about it. It's much harder to live it. That evening, as Arif walked past a crowded bakery, The old temptation returned. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. His stomach grumbled. His hands twitched. It would be so easy. A small distraction. Quick grab. No one would even notice. The old Arif would have done it without hesitation. But today something stopped him. A single thought. If you need something, just ask. Arif clenched his jaw. He knew what he had to do. For the first time in years, he walked into the bakery. Instead of sneaking around it, and instead of stealing, he asked, "Sir, do you have anything left over at the end of the day? Something you don't sell?" The shopkeeper, an elderly man, looked up. "Why do you ask?" Arif hesitated. "Because I don't want to take something that isn't mine." The old man stared at him for a long moment. Then, with a small smile, he reached behind the counter and pulled out a paper bag. "Here, some bread from this morning. It's not fresh, but it's still good." Arif took the bag with shaking hands. "Thank you." And as he walked away, he realized something. This was the first time in his life he had earned something honestly, and it felt better than stealing ever had. Weeks passed. Arif didn't return to his old ways. Instead, he tried something new. He worked. First, it was small, helping at the bakery, running errands for shopkeepers, doing whatever he could to survive without stealing. And to his surprise, life didn't get harder. It got better. People started trusting him. The bakery owner would give him tea in the morning. The fruit vendor would hand him an extra banana. And the biggest surprise? One day when he walked past Raymond's hotel, the owner called out to him, "Arif, come here." Arif hesitated. Did he still remember? Did he still see him as a thief? But when he walked up, Raymond simply smiled. "I need a new helper for the evening shift. You interested?" Arif's eyes widened. "You want me?" Raymond chuckled. "I see the change in you, and I believe in second chances." For a moment, Arif was speechless. And then, with a deep breath, he nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." Months later, as Arif cleaned the tables at Raymond's hotel, he saw a young boy slipping something into his pocket. A sugar packet. A small theft. The same way he had started. Arif smiled to himself. And then, without anger, without force, he walked up to the boy and held out a sugar packet. "Here, you don't have to take it secretly. If you need something, just ask." The boy looked up, eyes wide. And for the first time, Arif saw himself in someone else. That day, Arif realized something powerful. Change doesn't start with force. It starts with understanding. And sometimes, the biggest lesson isn't about what we take. It's about what we choose to give. This isn't just Arif's story. It's a story about all of us. We all make mistakes. We all justify small wrongs. We all have moments where we think, no one will notice, but the truth is, someone always notices. And when given the chance to change, the real question is, will we take it? Because in the end, it's not about what we can get away with. It's about the kind of person we choose to be. And that choice is always ours.